Hi, welcome to the Online Jewelry Academy. I'm Professor John R., and today I have a guest instructor for you, Jennifer Monroe. Hi, Jen.
Hi, John. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, what are you going to be showing us today?
I'm going to be showing you guys riveting with wire and with tubes.
Oh, great. Well, I understand that you give a variety of workshops.
Yeah, I actually do in my studio in Carlsbad, California.
Oh, well, what type of workshops do you give?
I do a lot of different types. It's mainly metals, but I do some dichroic fusing, enameling, some basic fabrication. I do some custom stamp making, so you make your own tools. And one of my favorite ones is a 3-day workshop in making a custom copper corset that will fit yourself when you leave.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
How do you assemble that?
Oh, that's with sheet metal and riveting, so there's no soldering involved.
Oh, so this is perfect that we get to do this.
I love to rivet.
Now, if our viewers want to get in touch with you and take a workshop, how do they find you?
Oh, it's real easy. You can go to jenmonroe.com and go to the back of the site and you'll see a list of my workshops.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, take us through what you've got laid out on the bench.
Okay, so I prepared some metal that we're going to rivet together. Riveting is 2 pieces of metal to be put together.
Okay.
I have wire and tube, and I have correlating drill bits that match the thickness of the wire and the tube, saw blades, center punch, file, Sharpie pin. I have a Ball-Peen Hammer, small one. I have a Rawhide Mallet, a tube cutting jig, a steel block anvil, double stick tape. I have your jeweler saw frame, some basic wire snips, and a piece of wood block.
Now, you said you had a variety of the drill bits that correlate to the wire and the tube. How are you checking that?
So I check that with a gauge, a metal gauge, or with calipers. But to do riveting, that's the most important thing, is that if your wire doesn't match the exact thickness of the drill bit, it's not going to work. So you have to have this to start with.
Okay, so you want a really snug fit.
Oh, you want a perfect snug fit.
Okay, and I notice you have the check key out.
Yes, I do, because we're going to be using the flex shaft, a power tool, so.
And everybody knows what that means. We got to put on safety glasses because you only have 2 eyes and you need to protect them because they are priceless. Okay, well, let's clear some space here so that you can show us how you work, and we'll be right back so you can just see how this is done.
Okay, great. Well, looks like we have everything here, ready to work.
Great, let's get started.
Okay, so first you're going to have your 2 pieces of metal, and we're going to join them together. Now they need to be flat, so I'm going to take my rawhide mallet, and I'm going to tap each piece flat.
Okay.
And then I'm going to take my top piece, and I'm going to mark it with a Sharpie to get the orientation of where I'm going to put my tube rivet. Okay, and let's say I'm going to do 3 today.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the top piece, so I put my orientations here, and I'm going to take my center punch, my ball peen, and I'm going to tap the guide so the drill bit goes exactly where I want it to go in the metal, so it doesn't skip around. That's what the center punch is for. But before I drill, this is really important. You want to have both of your pieces touch super flat. And if they're not touching flat, then you're going to have trouble when you drill it. They'll skip and spin about. What I like to do is after I do my center punches, on the top piece, I'll get some double stick tape. Okay, and then I'm going to tape it together. And that should be a pretty good hold. And now I'm going to drill the holes in so they match exactly.
Okay, so the tape is just there temporarily then?
Yeah, it's just there just to hold it together while I'm drilling it to keep it from spinning. And it gets a really good contact if both pieces are flat.
Okay.
And I leave a little bit extra because sometimes if your piece is really flat, it's going to stick and it's hard to peel up. So I just leave a little off the edge, and we're ready to go with the drill.
Okay.
All right.
I'll warn you, that flex shaft gives a little bit of a kick.
Let's see. Every tool operates a little bit differently. Okay, so I'm going to hold my piece. Ooh, yeah, it's got a little kick. So I'm going to anchor my elbow and part of my arm onto the bench, so it'll give me some stability while I'm drilling. I'm going to line up the drill bit. Now sometimes when you're drilling on a large with a large drill bit and a small piece, it gets a little bit hot, so you might want to do a pilot hole first.
Good idea.
Yeah, because it gets a little hot to hold. So we got one, so we know we're all the way through.
Okay. Now, do you drill all the holes, or do you?
Yeah, it's a good idea to drill all the holes at one time, because if you just do one and rivet it, and this is what I'm going to show you right now, is when you peel the piece back apart, you get a little burr and you have to remove that. But just for today, I'm just going to show you one hole.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, so we're going to peel it apart, but before I peel it apart, I'm going to give it an orientation so I know how it fits together.
Oh, okay.
So here's like the top, and it lines to the bottom.
So it's a registration.
Yeah, registration. So I know, you know, which is the top, which is the bottom, because I'll peel it apart. And then I'm going to deburr it. And what I like to deburr with, you can have a fancy burr, but I like a larger drill bit that's sharp. And I just place it on the hole, and I spin it a couple times lightly, rub my finger, and it's smooth. The burr's gone.
Oh my goodness, that is nice and smooth.
Yeah,
That's a
it's
great
cheap and
trick.
easy. Yeah. So you deburr both pieces, top and bottom. And so this is when you need that orientation.
So you can put it back together.
Yeah, put it back together. And how it lines up exactly.
And taking that burr away, make sure that they're nice and close and kissing each
Yeah,
other.
yes. Then I'm going to take my tube, and I'm going to file it flat on the top.
Okay.
And the reason why I file it flat is because it's going to rest on the anvil. And so when I strike it, it needs to be flat. If it's filed crooked, then the tube's not going to flare out evenly. Just one side will flare out and the tube will kink over. So it's
Okay.
really important to have a nice flat edge to start with.
Okay.
I'll insert it through the hole. Now this is a little bit on the loose side, and that happens a lot because a lot of times when you get your drill bit and your tube or your wire, it's not exact. But as long as it's, you know, really close, you're good.
As close as you can
Yeah,
get.
close as you can get it.
Okay. So how far do we extend the tubing out on either side?
So this is a tricky part. It's half the diameter of the hole
Okay.
or half the diameter of the wire because they're both the same diameter, correct?
Right.
Right. So what I'm going to do, this is a pretty thin piece of metal, so I'm just going to go the whole length, or the whole, you know,
The whole
width
diameter.
of the diameter,
Okay.
and I'm going to cut that, and just so you know, I eyeball it.
Okay.
I have a pretty good eye.
Well, you can exercise great care and measure everything.
Yes, you can measure
But
it.
you've been doing this long enough, I'm sure you can eyeball it perfectly.
And
Okay.
I always do leave my tube rivets, or the tube a little bit extra little length, because I can always file it down to be exact.
Ah,
And I'll show you how to do that.
okay.
All right. It's easier to remove the length than you can't add it back on once it's cut.
Right. Now, I always tell students to be careful when they're using the tube cutting jig while they're cutting tubing, because you go from one surface to two
Yes.
and then back to one,
One.
and you get that funny pool.
Yeah, as you cut through it. So it's really lucky that it didn't shoot out. Now cutting the tube and the wire is a little bit different, and you'll see how that works. So I have the tube, and it's a little bit hard to manage with my fingers, so sometimes I'll just get the wire.
Ah,
There's wire, or you can get a round file and just kind of hold it so you can guide it back up to there. All right, and it's going to go through the hole. And then I usually put pressure on it so it doesn't drop as I place it onto the anvil. And then I'm going to let it rest flat. Okay, so you see it's fitting through there. So I'm actually going to use my center punch to flare out the tube to kind of guide it to where I want it to go. But here's a little trick for you. If your tube is a little too tall, or your wire, you can actually hold your metal, raise it up a little, and see I can file it.
and reduce the height. of
Yeah,
it.
and
Got
lower it if it's too tall. But file it flat, not at an angle, okay? All right, now, when you're riveting on a tube or a wire, you want to make sure that the bottom sheet of metal is not touching the anvil. The only thing touching the anvil is the back side of the tube,
Okay.
okay? So what you can do is I just hold it, and I can feel it, and I can rock the metal back and forth, but you can take the same thickness of metal and use it as a cush. And I got a little tricky, and I did a disc cut, and this is the exact height,
Ah,
so I can put pressure down. Here's my center,
right.
punch, and I'm going to make sure I hold it straight, and I feel that it's resting flat on the anvil. Just lightly flare it out, just a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So let's check on it. Yeah, it flared out just a little bit. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to take my bottom piece out.
Now, do you need that cushion again?
No, you can use a cushion. I usually don't use it at all.
Okay.
You tap a little on each side.
And I noticed that you didn't mention that you had annealed the tubing at all, so...
Oh, I don't anneal the tubing or the wire. Yeah, I never have. Because it's not work hardened. If it's work hardened, then I would. But
Okay.
it's brand new, so it's ready to go.
Got it.
Okay, so I'm going to flip it over. And I put my thumb and pressure on it so the tube won't slide out. I'm going to flare it out a little bit more. So you see the tube is starting to flare out, and I don't have to hang on to it because it's going out, right?
It creates an edge that holds on to the top of the hole.
Yeah, because a rivet is like a mushroom flared out. The flaring out is what holds the two pieces together.
Got it.
But you notice I'm going to go back and forth a little at a time. So I'm going to gradually flare it out till I have enough lip. So I'm getting a little lip on the tube.
Now, I'm going to ask the question of, is there a faster way?
Well, there might be a faster way, but this is pretty precise.
Got
And
it.
this is how I do it. It's pretty hard to get a good tube flare that's even and looks nice and crisp.
Okay.
So once you get your lip flared out, then I'm going to use the ball-peen end of my hammer, and then I'm going to push it out even further. So I just guided it with the center punch, and now I'm going to tap it down.
Okay.
Okay? So this is where you really would want to use your guide.
Ah.
Okay? So, and I tap around the lip, not just necessarily in the center, but around
Okay.
the lip of the tube.
So you're hitting the actual edge of the
Yeah,
tube,
just the edge
not
of the tube.
trying to aim for the center hole.
No, not the center hole. So I'm slowly moving it to where I want it to go. I'm not whacking it super hard because you're just really, you know.
So you have to be patient.
Okay, I'm going to move this because this is looking pretty nice. And then you can hit it if you want a little bit flatter, but be sure that you're not striking it so it's the same flat surface and you're not mangling your design.
Wow.
That's tube riveting. All right.
What's next?
So next, I went ahead and I pre-drilled some holes with orientation to do just basic riveting with a wire.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's see, can we lay that down and look?
Yes, you can.
So you've got, I can see you put a registration mark here, and then
Mhm.
you have one
On the
here
back.
to tell me that that's the back.
Yeah, so this is the top, that's the back, so I know where they go together because I deburred them.
Okay,
And what did I deburr them with? Do you remember?
the big drill
Yeah,
bit.
the big drill bit.
I'm paying attention.
I'm just checking. Okay, so I'm going to put these two together. All right, I'm going to set them down, and I'm going to take my wire, and you can straighten out your wire, but you don't have to because you're just going to use a little section, right? I'm going to take my wire to my bench pin, I'm going to file the pinched end flat. It's just like the tube. You want to have the end of your wire or tube flat because this is the surface that's going to be resting on the anvil when you strike it. And I know when I have it nice and flat when I see a round dot. The end of the wire is round, not an oval shape.
Got
Okay?
it. That's a good way to remember.
Yeah, so you want to make sure you have a nice round dot.
Yeah, I noticed that you're using an economy of tools to do this. This is great.
Yeah, real basic stuff, so you don't have to have all these fancy tools to do great work.
Right, and it keeps the cost down.
Keeps the cost down, and it keeps you, if I use the file to file and deburr, it saves me from picking up an extra tool.
That's true.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to insert it into the hole. I got it through, and again, I want half the diameter of the hole. Or what I can do is I can kind of get the wire pretty close to the edge and get my snips right next to the edge
Okay.
of the metal. And when I snip it, because the snips won't go perfectly next to the metal, it leaves a little extra pinch. And now I'm going to file that away.
Ah,
And
okay.
now I'm going to get the right height. Okay. Now if you do this, and sometimes the little piece will fall out, don't go after it. Don't try to pick it up and put it in. Get the wire and do a whole new piece. It's too hard. The tube is a little bit challenging to do. You can do that with the two, but not with the wire. I just get a whole new piece.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to raise this up. And so I'm actually using my metal to hold my little wire in place. So I file it flat. And so this is a really good way in case, you know, I always snip a little bit more of the wire, and I always file it down to exactly what I want.
Right. Like you said, you can file down to the right height, but you can't
You
add.
can't add, yeah, exactly. Once that metal's gone, it's gone. Okay, so I'm going to file this. All right, that looks good. I'm going to flip it over. That was my back side. Now I'm going to go ahead and make sure I have some rivets sticking out on each side of the metal. You can use your little guide to make sure that you don't flatten out. And the reason why you put this guide here is because it keeps you to have a little bit of cush. Because if you set this flat down, if I rivet on this wire, the wire's going to bend over. And on the back side, there's no mushroom head to hold the two pieces of metal together.
Right.
Yeah.
So this isn't a flush rivet. This is
No,
one
this
that
is not a
actually
flush.
has a head to it.
Exactly.
And that's kind of fun
That's what a
because
riveting is, yeah.
right, and then you can manipulate that head into something ornamental if you wanted to. That's so great.
Yeah, I like to use them as part of my piece. So the riveting actually has an aesthetic that adds to my piece. You don't always have to hide it. So I'm going to lightly tap it. And what I'm doing is I'm upsetting it just a little bit. This one is a little bit tad on the long side. So if you're working and you notice that it's a little bit long, that's real easy. I just get my file out and I'll hang on to the piece and file it flat and remove the length. Okay? It's tedious, but this is how you get nice, even rivets. Okay, so I'll just file it flat. I can use my guide so I don't have to hang on to it. So I'm tapping around the wire, slowly flaring it out. I didn't have too much of a plume on the top, so I pressed it down to make sure that I have wire sticking out on both sides of the metal. And the one thing about rivets, and why you leave that mushroom head, is if you do a piece and you're sandwiching something in between, if you ever need to do repair, you snip off that rivet head and then the piece falls apart. And I like to go around on my rivets to kind of give it a little bit of a faceted look. I like it to look handmade. That's just my preference. It's just an aesthetic choice. So if you notice with the ball end of the hammer, I'm striking and I can see where I'm hitting the wire and not the metal piece, because if I hit the metal piece, I'll be putting a ding into it. So
Right.
You only want to be striking the wire. So I strike the wire on the top, and then the bottom of the piece, the wire is hitting the anvil, and then it's causing it to flare out on both sides. But we always go back and forth to make sure it's flaring out evenly. And then once you feel like it's flared out pretty nicely, you can go ahead and give it a good little whack. And that's riveting.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed watching Jennifer create rivets. And remember, if you want to get in touch with Jennifer, go to jenmonroe.com and you can check out her workshops.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for watching, and check out our other videos and products on the onlinejewelryacademy.com.